What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Soccerology 101. Today is all about one of the more confusing, stranger aspects of the way European soccer and the entire system is set up, and that is European competitions. And this idea that you have all of these different teams playing against teams from different countries, playing in different competitions. It is not as simple as you're playing against the other however many teams in your league, you play them, and that's kind of that, which is what we are used to here in the United States. Different universe when it comes to soccer, specifically in Europe, so that's what we're going to dive into today. Before focusing on Europe specifically, I want to sort of take a step back and explain what a regular season looks like for a European team. Doesn't really matter what country. So, of course, every team is going to compete in their domestic league, whatever tier they're in. They have a group of teams from their country that they're going to compete against. Everybody's going to play everybody. And then most leagues, including the top, the five major ones in Europe, whoever's got the most points at the end of that home and home round robin situation is the champion for that league, and in the top league, the champion for that country. The other competitions you're going to be competing in are your domestic cup or domestic cups in the case of England. Most countries just have one. England has two, and then even another one at the lower divisions. Don't need to get into all of that. The point being, these two competitions, your domestic cups and your league, you're only going to be playing teams from your country. What makes the European competitions different is that it is exactly like it sounds. It is a competition between teams from across Europe. So this is how you get Bayern Munich playing Real Madrid or Juventus playing Manchester United, whatever it might be. Otherwise, if you're not participating in the European competition, you're only getting teams from the same country playing each other. So that is the one important difference here. And the other thing I want to clarify right at the beginning, because it sounds kind of strange and can get confusing. All of these competitions are played at the same time. The European season runs from August to May, and typically what it looks like is you have league games on the weekend, and sometimes in the middle of the week when you don't have a European competition. And then there are a couple weekends that are dedicated to cup competitions. And the European competitions, until you get to a final, are all midweek. Tuesday, Wednesday for the Champions League, which is the top European competition, and Thursday for the Europa League, which is the second tier European competition, and the Europa Conference League, which just started last season, also plays on Thursdays and is now the third tier European competition. So all this is happening at the same time, which is why teams have to sort of balance their lineups and rotate players. It's called squad rotation, because you can't send the same 11 guys out there to play theoretically, 3 games in 8 or 9 days, which is what most of the teams at the highest level are going to be doing if they do qualify for a European competition. So you just got to think about it in terms of different competitions happening at the same time that really don't have anything to do with one another. You'll see the same teams play each other in a domestic cup and in the league. You might even see teams play each other in a league, a domestic cup, and a European competition. It's rare, but it can happen. Okay, so how do you qualify for a European competition, and sort of how does this whole thing work? The best example I can give, the best comparison out there, is an NCAA tournament for basketball at the college level, right? The idea is you take the best teams from all the different conferences who are going to get into this competition based on their performance over the season, and in the case of college basketball, conference tournaments, and you're going to bring them all together, and they're going to play this single elimination tournament to determine a champion. That is basically how European competitions work. So here is an example of the teams from the English Premier League that qualified for this season's European competitions, which are starting in a matter of hours as I'm recording this video. The full extended version of the tournament. We'll get to that in a minute. So England has every league has a set number of teams that are qualifying for each of these competitions. So in England's case, it's 7 teams. The top 4 go to the Champions League. 5th and 6th place go to the Europa League, and 7th place goes to the Europa Conference League. So this is, again, just purely based off of your performance in the league. There are other ways to qualify: winning a domestic cup, winning one of the European competitions the season before. Not going to dive deep into that. Generally, what you need to know, you get to these competitions based on your performance in your league. Very similar to, again, that NCAA tournament. Your regular season champions generally get in, especially in the bigger leagues, based on how you do throughout the entire season. And of course, you've got the conference tournament aspect of it that doesn't really apply here. But that is sort of an example of how this works. So your 4 teams in the Champions League from England this season: Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Tottenham. Okay, so how do these competitions actually work? What does it look like? Basically, what they do is you combine the league aspect of, right, you're playing everybody home and away. It's long, drawn out. You got to be consistent over an entire 34, 38 game season. And the cup competitions, which are basically just single elimination. Whatever happens that day, you win in advance or you lose and go home kind of thing. And sort of put it into one hybrid of those two. You've got 3 different stages of these European competitions. The first is the qualifying stage, where some teams are slotted into this qualifying stage based on where they finish and what league they're in. There's a whole system that calculates all this stuff that we're not going to spend time on. But some of the teams, especially the ones from the smaller countries, smaller leagues, have to go through qualifying to even get to the main competition itself. So this happens at the very beginning of the season. Just finished this up a week or so ago. It's not that many teams that are involved, but it's finalizing the last 5 to 10-ish spots in these competitions. Then you get to where it really starts, which is the group stage. Most teams qualify directly for the group stage, but like I mentioned, some have to go through qualifying to get there. The group stage, everybody participates that is in the competition. You're divided into 14 groups. So it's Group A, Group B, Group C, just like a World Cup. And just like a World Cup, you play everybody in your group, except you play them home and away this time, not just once. So you've got 2 games against the other 3 teams, 6 games total for everybody in the group stage. The top 2 teams from every group advance to what is called the knockout stage. In the Champions League, this gives you 16 teams. The third place teams drop down a competition. So this part can be a little bit confusing. So if you finish third in the Champions League group, you then enter the knockout stage of the Europa League. And if you finish third in the Europa League group, you enter the knockout stage of the Conference League. Conference League third place teams, your European run is over. So once you get to a knockout round, you have a random draw that sets up one team against each other. There are some rules, again, we're not going to get into them, about teams from the same country can't play each other, but generally speaking, it's a random draw. So you don't have any control over who your opponent is. There is no bracket. You just randomly get assigned somebody you're going to play in the Champions League round of 16. And then this also applies to the other 2 competitions, but I'm going to stay focused on the Champions League to make it a little simpler and just go through one example. So then you play what is called a 2-legged tie. That's the fancy terminology. It's a home and home. Each team gets to play 1 game at home, and you add up the aggregate score. Whoever scores more goals over those 2 games, those 2 legs, advances. If the aggregate score is tied after the 2 legs, you play extra time. An extra 30 minutes, 2 15-minute halves. just like in a World Cup or, a single elimination tournament. And just like a World Cup, if you still don't have a winner after the extra time, you go to penalty kicks. So you've got 180 minutes, maybe 210 to determine a winner. And then it goes to penalties. And then you've got your 8 teams for the quarterfinals, and you do the same thing over again. Random draw to figure out who's playing who. Again, there is no bracket. It doesn't sort of carry over from round to round. It's completely random. Go through it again. You got your semifinals, and then we get to the final. The final is one game at a neutral venue. That is where this changes. But up until then, it's home and homes, 2 games to see who advances. Okay, so what is the actual significance of these competitions? Sort of how do they factor into the overall soccer landscape in Europe? The short answer is the significance varies dramatically based on what team you're talking about and what competition they are in. I'll start by saying the Champions League is widely considered to be the highest level of competition in this sport, period. Because these are teams playing with each other every day. You're not trying to sort of bring this group of players together for a month-long tournament at a World Cup. You're actually getting that practice every single day and building that camaraderie and that cohesion over seasons. And so, by and large, if you ask a player, a fan, at the club level, what is the one trophy you want to win, the one competition you want to win? Most people are going to tell you it's the Champions League. So that is where I want to start with the significance. Winning the Champions League is a massive, massive deal. It gives you the right to be called champions of Europe. Where it gets a little more interesting and you see the variety in terms of the significance is specifically in the Europa and Conference Leagues. Some teams coming from a smaller league, smaller budget, teams that don't have a lot of past history competing in Europe, may put tremendous value on getting into the Europa League or the Conference League. It could mean a great deal to simply get to a semi-final of a European competition. It doesn't matter which one. It's the highlight of that club for a decade, maybe even longer, to just get this experience and get, as a fan, you get to go travel to all of these different countries and see your team play all these teams from different countries. Where the sort of opposite view comes in, and opposite isn't the perfect word, but you'll see where I'm going, is if you're, for example, Manchester United, who's playing in the Europa League this season. Manchester United, for good reason, simply believe, as a club, their fans, everybody, they should be in the Champions League. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world, one of the most financially powerful clubs in the world. It is ultimately disappointing they are playing in the Europa League this season. So they're going to view that differently than a team that is simply happy to be there. Manchester United are viewing this as, we need to get back to the Champions League as soon as possible, which may lead to, we'll just stick with the United example, them prioritizing the Premier League over the Europa League because they feel like the Premier League is the best way to qualify for next season's Champions League. You just got to finish in the top 4. So that might be where they put their emphasis. It is kind of strange because you're qualifying for a competition the season before. But at the end of the day, Manchester United still absolutely want to win the Europa League. There is not a team out there that sort of throws these competitions away and doesn't value them at all. You're going to see something less than Manchester United's preferred 11 in the group stage of the Europa League. Because of the amount of games, because that team should still be good enough to get the job done. But there are 3 European trophies now you can win, right? There are only so many trophies out there in this sport that you can capture. And there are only 3 They give you European glory. And so all three of these competitions carry significance. It means a little bit different to every single club and sort of the story that unfolds throughout the season and that European run. But don't get it twisted that teams just disregard the Conference League. For example, Roma won the inaugural Conference League last season. Roma, massive club, all kinds of history, not winning a lot of European trophies. It was a huge deal, and they celebrated it like it was a massive deal, and rightfully so. So I do want to make that point that even the Conference League, people weren't exactly sure how it was going to fare and how seriously teams were going to take it. But Roma took it awfully seriously and set a very nice tone in terms of how you're going to treat that competition moving forward. The other significance here is kind of twofold, but I'm going to sort of put it into the same umbrella of the economic impact of these competitions. You qualify for the Champions League, you get Champions League money, right? All of these group stage games are broadcast around the world, and some of that money goes back to the teams. And then if you continue to get deeper in the tournament, you get even more money from it. So the revenue is a huge deal here. It changes for a team that's not expecting it and not sort of behaving as a team that views themselves as a Champions League team every single season. It can change the trajectory of your club for 5+ seasons to get this kind of money. It allows you to do things differently from a transfer market standpoint. And the other side of this is not only do you have more financial resources that allow you to spend more on players, players absolutely care whether teams that are interested in trying to sign them in the summer transfer window are going to be playing in the Champions League that season or not. This is the reason Cristiano Ronaldo was trying to leave Manchester United this summer, is that Manchester United, like I said, is in the Europa League. Cristiano Ronaldo wants to play in the Champions League. And so if a smaller club finds a way to qualify for the Champions League, they have this incredible opportunity to land players that they usually might not be able to because they are offering this opportunity to play Champions League. And you've got extra money coming in to sort of back this financially. So this is a huge deal for all of those different reasons. These competitions mean a lot. Most people will tell you Champions League, best of the best when it comes to this sport. And the Europa League, still a big deal. We're still sort of learning how the Conference League fits into all of this because it's only in Season 2 now. But don't sort of view this as it's Champions League or nothing. And a lot of these teams that are making a run in the Europa League are not teams that are going to be able to make a long, successful run in the Champions League. So it's kind of all relative, and that's where we'll end the significance conversation. It's all relative to your club, your expectations, sort of your history, and what constitutes success for you. And finally, we can't talk about something I've been comparing to the NCAA tournament without talking about our beloved underdogs and Cinderellas. Do we have these great underdog stories in European competitions? Absolutely. Again, it is very similar to the NCAA tournament. You see upsets every single season, particularly in the knockout stage, because it is much easier to take down a more talented team over 2 games in 180 minutes than it is over a 38-game season. It sets itself up for that drama and those upsets. Just like the NCAA tournament, right? It's one game. UMBC didn't need to beat Virginia 5 times or be better over an ACC regular season than Virginia. They had to beat them the one time, and they did. It's very similar in that aspect. It's also very similar in the sense that when you look up at the end of the day and you get to the quarterfinals and the semifinals, it is your big teams that are typically left standing. Your Real Madrids, your Liverpools, in years past your Manchester Uniteds, your PSGs, you can go down the list. That being said, every once in a while, you do have not only an upset that is pulled in the round of 16 or a team you don't expect to get out of the group stage that does, but a team that actually makes a deep run and gets close to winning the whole thing. Most recent example of this is Villarreal last season. Villarreal, mid-size, you could even argue a smaller club in Spain, very solid in La Liga, that first tier, but certainly not on the level of Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, a team that usually finishes between 5th and 10th. Maybe that's even a little bit generous in La Liga. Made it to the Champions League semifinals last season. Knocked out German giants Bayern Munich and Italian giants Juventus to do it, too. They didn't play a bunch of cupcakes. Those were the two teams they knocked out in the knockout round of 16 quarterfinals. Bayern and Juventus. And you have other past seasons. Lyon also knocked out Juventus, took out Manchester City when they made the semifinals a few seasons ago. Roma got the better of Barcelona when they made the semifinals a couple years before that. So every 2 or 3 years, you do have a team. Usually, it just sort of seems recently they've made the semifinals, and then they play, one too many world-class teams and ultimately come up a little bit short. But absolutely, unexpected results, Cinderella stories, part of every single Champions League, every single European competition. It's just when you actually get to the business end of things, just like the NCAA tournament, it's usually the most talented teams that are left standing. Because you start with 8 to 10 of them, and then you have, 5, 6, 7 that make the quarterfinals, 3 or 4 that make the semis, and usually it's a high-profile matchup in the Champions League final. Like I said, these competitions, the qualifying rounds have already been completed. The group stage is starting now. Tuesday, September 6th is the beginning of the Champions League group stage. Europa League, Conference League, both starting later this week. So this is a perfect time to start paying attention. You can follow this thing basically from beginning to end. The Champions League will come to a conclusion and play its final right after the domestic seasons end, the leagues end in May. So we got plenty of time. World Cup makes this a little bit confusing this season, but you're going to play some of it. We're going to take a break for the World Cup. Then you're going to finish the Champions League and the rest of these European competitions. Super, super excited. Should be a great season, and it's a perfect time to start following this and see what underdog Cinderella's incredible stories unfold this time around. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and check out the written part of this that sort of complements this video on Substack as well as Medium. That's all we've got for Soccerology 101 this time. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.